That's right, you read the title correctly. Bet you didn't know that Italy had and has aircraft carriers. This is the third part of an unofficial series on the carriers of various countries, and I am obligated to plug the shit out of those two videos because that's how the YouTube game works or something. I don't know, I'm only here for the dopamine. Anyways, here's the Italian carrier experience. Every great journey begins with a single step, as they say, and carriers were definitely no exception to this. Most countries saw the use of aircraft in war as an inevitability, but the Italians were kind of the first to actually act on it, making use of planes during the invasion of Libya in 1911. So when they saw the British, French, and Japanese doing some funny things with planes and boats, they pretty much went, shit, I want in on that. So they looked around for things to convert for experimentation and found a merchant ship called Manila, Silesia, Quarto, what the hell, I thought renaming ships was bad luck. She served multiple countries before ending up in the hands of the Regia Marina in 1915. Now, pausing for a second, technically the cruiser Elba was the first ship that they had capable of handling seaplanes, but she was still more of a cruiser with a crane than an actual carrier, so she doesn't count. Anyways, the merchant ship was renamed Europa, and she would be totally refitted to have hangars, workshops, ammunition depots, the works. She also doubled as a submarine tender because they really wanted their money's worth with the bloody thing. Honestly, they ended up ripping most of the top half of the ship up and rebuilding it to accommodate the new changes, even going so far as to straight up make the ship longer by a few meters. Work would be done by May of 1915, leaving a final displacement of roughly 8,800 tons fully loaded. She could hold 8 planes normally, with another 8 possible to store if they were taken apart, so, you know, it carried 8 planes. She could only do seaplanes though, like the French ones, by simply using a crane and dropping them in the water. She was also unfathomably fucking slow, at 12.2 knots, which is only slightly faster than a sailboat with good wind, so wasn't going anywhere fast. As for her service life, it wasn't very long. She was already pretty old, being originally launched in 1895, but despite this, she would have some fun in the first worldwide slugfest. She was almost exclusively deployed against Austria-Hungary, where she did her job pretty well. Her aircraft even took part in the Battle of the Strait of Otranto, and a month later would raid Durazzo and blow up a bunch of Austria's shit in the harbor. She spent the last little bit serving as just a submarine tender since her aircraft were moved elsewhere. Eventually, after the war ended, she mostly became a large, slow waste of money, so she would be scrapped in 1920. After Europa was scrapped, Italian naval doctrine shifted back towards bigger gun equals win, so carriers were put on the back burner, but not entirely abandoned. The Navy would buy out another ship in 1923 and begin work on converting her into another seaplane carrier, renaming her to Giuseppe, Miraglia? Miraglia? Fuck, I don't know. She was to be slightly more streamlined and smaller than her predecessor, having a 5,900-ton displacement fully loaded. She was a big step up, however, in the fact that she could carry almost double the planes, and they didn't need to dismantle them to do it, and would come equipped with catapults, meaning it could actually launch things from itself. Speed was better as well at 21 knots, so overall she was a complete upgrade. Her service life was pretty interesting. For starters, before she was even finished, she got fucked by a storm and capsized, which would extend her time at dock by a full 2 years, finally being commissioned in 1927. She would see action in the Italian invasion of Ethiopia, the second one that didn't end in humiliation for the Pasta Boys, and the Spanish Civil War, both times providing pretty solid air support. She barely survived the raid on Taranto, then did some more stuff around the Mediterranean, but not actually that much because nobody had any fucking gasoline. After Italy peaced out, she went to Malta to be interned, whereafter she would be, impressed, which means stolen, by the British as a depot ship. After the war ended, she spent her retirement years as a barrack ship that vibed in Taranto until she was scrapped in 1950. The CV ride doesn't end with just seaplanes though. Even though they were still focused on battleships because of the French, they were about ready to try for actual deck-based carriers by this point, and thus the Navy yoinked 2 passenger liners, the Augustus and the Roma. Augustus was originally planned to be converted into a carrier as early as 1936, but plans fell through until the war started in 1939. She would be renamed to Sparviero, and work for conversion would begin in 1942. She was planned to displace a little over 30,000 tons on completion, have a 20-knot speed, and be theoretically capable of carrying 46 planes. This is all fine and good, but remember this is 1942. A slight complication the next year will result in work being suspended. The Germans, goddammit, waltzed in, seized the hull, and then sank it in Genoa to block the harbor. Really don't know what else you were expecting from them, to be completely honest. She was raised after the war, then scrapped in 1951. This is a trend, if you couldn't tell. For some reason I always misname this one as Aquilea, and I don't know why. Anyways, Aquila was originally the other passenger liner, and Sparviero's de facto sister, Roma. The carrier hesitancy quickly evaporated after the Italians got sodomized at Cape Matapan, and in 1941 they got to work, ripping out basically the entire ship to make room for their new carrier facilities. She displaced 28,000 tons fully loaded, could carry 51 aircraft on a good day, and could theoretically make a solid 30 knots. She got much farther along in a shorter time than Sparviero, and as a result actually got to the testing phase. Her big flaw, they found out, was that her arresting wires didn't work, simply meaning that the planes couldn't actually land back on her deck once they took off, which I find kind of funny. The Germans also put quite a bit of stuff behind her construction. After all, their carrier projects went less than well, including giving the Italians the catapults that Strasser was supposed to use. Because of all this, she actually was pretty much done by 1943, just in time for, again, Italy to surrender. The near-complete hull of Aquila was seized by the Germans. It's unlikely that they would have been capable of finishing it and putting it to use given their, precarious as fuck position, but it could be used as a gigantic cinder block to block the harbor where it was stationed, kind of like Sparviero. However, Aquila being essentially done would make her blocking the harbor even more painful. She would be damaged in an Allied air raid in 1944, and near the end of the war in 1945, a unit of MAS commandos dispatched by the Allied Italian government scuttled Aquila in the harbor in a place that didn't cause too many problems, beating the Germans to the punch. She was raised in 1946, and she kind of just sat in limbo while everyone decided what to do with her. Eventually, it was decided against finishing her up and putting her into service, and she was scrapped in 1952. Well, it's been a while since the last carriers we tried to make. Reckon we give it another go? Fuck it, why not? In 1978, they laid down Giuseppe Garibaldi. She was the first Italian keel-up aircraft carrier and the first full flight deck carrier that they actually managed to finish. Compared to other carriers, she is smaller than most, clocking in at only 14,000-ish tons, which compared to something like the Nimitz class's 100,000 is basically nothing. This makes more sense than you would think, though. For one, she was designed with giving submarines a very bad time in mind, and nowadays that's a job for helicopters. Don't fucking type anything, she's not a helicopter carrier and was designed explicitly to use planes. It's just a funny little oversight meant she had to be designed with helicopters in mind. You see, a pre-World War II leftover law gave complete control over all fixed-wing aircraft to the Air Force, and inter-service rivalry being a thing meant they were not keen to share. So for several years from her commissioning in 1983, she could only use helicopters, when in 1989 everyone told the Air Force to fuck off and let the ship have planes. Wait, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, ship specs. She can make 30 knots on a good day and carry a maximum of 18 aircraft depending on the ratio of helicopters to planes. Again, being comparatively small means not a whole lot of elbow room. Small does not mean easy to take out though, and she has an array of anti-air missiles, decoy launchers, and a shitload of radar and sonar, and of course ASW equipment, which, oh, would you look at that, happens to be fucking torpedoes. God damn it. Torpedoes on carriers. Who would have fucking thought? Okay, right. Service life, sorry. Okay, she ran with NATO fleets rather often, since again she was designed as an upsized escort carrier. She participated in operations in Kosovo, Afghanistan, and Libya, along with your standard peacetime shit. She was refitted in 2003 and 2013, and is still in service today. Cavour is basically Giuseppe Garibaldi's squared. It serves much the same purpose, designed around planes and helicopters, however she can also double as a very large military base that can transport vehicles and shit, which is interesting. Fuck it, let's make her able to transform into a hospital ship too. They basically went the American route of a ship that does everything just on a much smaller scale. She was laid down in 2001 and commissioned in 2008. She displaces 27,000 tons fully loaded, has a top speed of around 28 knots, and can carry 20-ish aircraft. Like her predecessor, she has a metric fuck-ton of radar, sensors, missiles, and other marvelous feats of engineering. Her first, and kinda only, mission was not actually combat related, playing a role in the relief efforts following the 2010 Haiti earthquake. Hospital Altar was a good investment in hindsight, eh? She wouldn't do much else other than exercises, however, as the Navy wanted an aircraft upgrade, specifically to the F-35 Lightning II. Not a cheap plane, and also not easy to make work, so they had to do some retrofitting less than a decade into its service life, which has to be a new record. After that was done, in February of this past year, she went to the United States for trials to see if they could actually use the planes they wanted, and lo and behold, success. Now she's kind of just waiting to actually get the planes that they wanted, which could take a while. She is still in service though. Again, mostly doing exercises. No point letting an expensive ass ship just sit in port after all. This one is weird. It's classified as a helicopter landing dock, but LHDs can also use regular aircraft, and that's the plan. I don't want to violate my no helicopter carriers rule, but since this is technically a helicopter carrier but also not, I don't know what to do here. There are two legally distinct classifications of ship designed to fulfill different roles. Well, it's not in service yet, so I'm going to make the executive decision and state that it is indeed a helicopter carrier, and as a result it doesn't exist. My word is law on this channel, and therefore I am banning LHDs going into the future. And that was the Italian carrier experience. Not a whole lot to cover since Italy really never had the capability of fielding large numbers of the things. I'll reiterate, carriers are fucking expensive. But really, Germany, France, and Italy were just me getting the minor countries out of the way. Strap yourselves in, folks, because Japan is next. That about does it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you around.